Okay, so hooray, yet more information. You're about to get back to worship. You didn't have any planning when you had to shut down. It was like state mandates, next week, no public gatherings. And everybody was scrambling. How do I use Facebook? This is insane. And you've adjusted. I loved hearing Sam's testimony earlier. Man, it was nuts. And now I'm decompressing and I'm even beginning to feel more at peace. Okay, don't feel too at peace, because pretty soon you're going to have to reorganize, rethink, and plan for what happens when you reopen. The good news is you actually have lead time. You know you're going to get to reopen. You didn't know you had to shut down. You know you get to reopen. So let's think about what that looks like, okay? And I know you're thinking, yay, this is the best thing to be thinking about now. I'd rather be eating pizza. But there are, in the stage 3 and 4 reopening plans, there are 3 major things that we need to think about. 1, what do you do differently as you re-implement gathering for worship? 2, how will you be dealing with some of the significant losses that, if you haven't felt now, you will feel over the coming weeks and maybe months? And 3, this is actually my favorite, how do you preserve some of the virtual gains that you've begun to make? So let's think about this. First of all, we need to think about worship reopening. Jen, you asked about some help for this online. Each of these bullet points, I have detailed thoughts to guide boards posted online. But just to see the basic principles here, avoid shared materials. You're going to have to shift the way you look at worship group sizes. You should form clean teams, because we're going to have to keep things clean for quite some time. Learn to socially distance and love and what that means. And you might even need to look at how we limit visitors in the church. Now, I took those principles down. Again, don't worry, they're online. You can download them anytime. We're going to break them out real quickly. First, it's going to be really hard for some people. But when we're allowed to come back together, probably in the middle of the summer, maybe earlier, I hope, maybe later, but probably in the middle of summer, almost certainly there will still be size restrictions. So almost certainly you will have to look at, and I'm guessing based on initial recommendations, not being able to meet in groups of larger than 100, or more likely groups larger than 50. Now, for a lot of our churches, like, no problem, man, I've got 30 people in my church. We'll sit 6 feet apart and it's all groovy. Good for you. Praise the Lord. For some of our churches, you might have to look at actually going to 2 services. Or be creative, but your board needs to figure this out. I can't do it for you. Be creative. Maybe alphabetical order, you know. On week 1 and 3, people A through L get to meet in church. Week 3 or 2 and 4, people M through Z get to meet for church. I don't know. Find a way to lower the number of people that are gathering in person. It's going to be tough, but you can be creative and do it. Keep doing virtual, keep doing virtual, keep doing virtual, keep doing virtual. Even when we begin to reopen, some will jump back into church and want to do it, and some will be nervous about going back to church. So even when you go back to in person, you might find not as many people thronging at your door as you would hope. No matter what, though, you have to think ahead and plan for how you might deal with public worship if you're capped at 50, for example. So talk about that with your boards. And Eugene, I'm believing that your church plant is going to be 50 before the end of the summer. So we have to be able to think that one through as well.
Woo, hallelujah.
Name it and claim it.
Name it and claim it. We claim, I receive.
Amen and amen. Here's another critical principle. Don't do anything that requires people to touch the same object more than once. Here's what I mean by that. Passing an offering plate is passing from one hand to another over and over and over. Communion trays being passed, if that's how you do it, is passing things from one hand over and over and over. Nursery toys. That's not just hands, that's drool. I hate to be real. Hymnals, songbooks, things that are communal property or things that you share, you need to stop sharing. So think about that. I mean, there's tons of creative ways to do this. So for example, and you can think about it on your own. I'm just throwing that out as the principle. You guys can all figure it out. But for example, with communion. I don't know if you know this or not, but the Free Methodist Church Book of Discipline forbade pastors from taking an element and handing it to a parishioner. I think it was discontinued as a requirement about 20 years ago. The reason was because we don't want to confuse people about the priestly idea of a Roman Catholic priest, the one who is the mediator between God and the people, and the idea that you can go directly to Jesus, that a pastor pastors, but we aren't the priestly mediator. So that was a theological decision. It was eliminated as a practice, a requirement, and let me suggest, not a bad thing during the coronavirus. So you can have a team of people who are following proper hygiene, sanitized hands, maybe even wearing a face mask if that's required in your county, and some counties will. Actually then take what is obviously a clean cup and place it in a parishioner's hand, and a clean piece of bread and place it in a parishioner's hand, and that would be perfectly acceptable. Having a parishioner come and grab from a common loaf after another, sharing in a common cup, would probably really freak people out, even though that's my preferred practice. So think about it. The early church, by that I mean the church between 100 and 400 AD, had an incredibly common practice. They would have people bring their offerings when they came forward for communion. So there would be an offering for the poor near where the communion was offered. Maybe that's something you could adopt in your church as well. As you come forward for communion, feel free to drop your offering in that plate or that box that not everybody's touching. Better yet, keep doing digital giving. May that never stop. Focus on that. That's the future of the church. Okay. If there's anything other people can touch, don't use it in church. What does that mean for a Bible? Well, a couple things. One, you can actually encourage people to bring their own Bibles. Go figure. Two, most people right now use this as their Bible, and they already have it. That's awesome. Three, teachers, Sunday school teachers, pastors, small group leaders, you can also use, say, for example, a PowerPoint printed text that people can read along, or things of that nature. I would strongly recommend y'all don't use paper resources for a while. It's so much cleaner, easier for people to read, by and large, to use digital projected resources, and to encourage people to bring their own items anyway. So just a suggestion. Whether you take that suggestion or not, do take to heart. Don't allow people to be touching the same object in multiple ways. Will that last forever? Again, almost certainly not, but it certainly will for a while. Okay, that was a good question. Any other questions about limiting group size and not touching the same thing? Okay, so let me then move on to talk about the next two things, forming clean teams and social distancing in a church. Okay, there's one thing you can't have people not touch: toilet handles, faucets, doorknobs, that stuff. And whether you are a nail salon, a sports arena, or a church, The virus is going to be mostly impacting people through transmission of items either exhaled, which is why the mask, or through touch and hands. Assign a team in your church, if you haven't already, in the pre-shutdown phase to be the clean team. Bleach and water is still the most effective. That's cool. Don't worry if you can't buy Clorox wipes at the store because they're not available. Bleach and water works really good. But make sure that before every public gathering, all the doorknobs, all the faucets, and all the toilet stuff is cleaned and wiped down. And be sure afterwards it is as well. It really doesn't take that long to do, but you have to do it. How often should you clean your church? Well, the most contagious vectors are the ones I just shared. So the public health recommendations do not require cleaning every possible service with disinfectant every time. But keep your church clean. I mean, make sure it's clean no less than once a week and more frequently if you can. And you don't have to bring an ultraviolet light in to wash the floors and clean the chairs, but do good, healthy cleaning practices. But zero in, focus in, laser in on sanitizing doorknobs and handles that people touch. And again, with the nursery, man, I can't even imagine a nursery without toys, but I wouldn't even try to sanitize those after every use. If there's a way not to have those things in a nursery, don't. Okay. How do we social distance in church? Well, okay, this is horrible, right? Because I want to hug everybody. You're virtual, and I just want to give you a virtual hug. We hug. Some people even give each other a holy kiss still. It's in the Bible. Wow. What are we going to do when we can't actually hug each other and sit next to each other in church? It's going to be tough for a while, but it's important. So if you have chairs, for example, you can easily space those. No problem. You're smart. You can figure it out. And I love the way they meet at Sam Manu's place. You don't even have chairs, but you can easily space out on a floor. So you don't have to give group hugs. You can space out. If you have a pew, it's a little bit more difficult, but you can be creative. You know what to do. Put a couple of objects on a pew, rope a couple off, do whatever you can to ensure that there's some safe distancing. Can families sit next to each other? Absolutely. Rob just instant texted me. I'm sorry, I have to share these on occasion, Rob. Invest in hazmat suits. Just kidding, but it is a really good idea. And so social distancing is important. When you greet people at church, if you can keep your front door open and not have people use the doorknob at all, that's the best thing to do. And do not have your greeter stand right at the door. Don't do it. Have your greeter stand away from the door or well in front of it, either way. But you don't want people crowding an entrance. You do want somebody helping to guide people through where they need to go. This is going to be a major time when you actually might have to use ushers to give advice. Yeah, this is a wonderful time to get together. We're asking people to be safe. So if you could follow me to this seat, this is how we're helping to manage our worship time during the coronavirus. I think most people will be respectful of that. Most. Who should wear masks? Listen to your county. From my perspective right now, operating as most businesses do is probably not a bad idea. If you have people that are greeting others, it might be a good idea for them to wear a mask even if it's not required. A happy one with a smile painted on it, or the logo of your church if you're super cool, or perhaps a Darth Vader mask if you're Theo Meyer. But no matter how you look at it, you do not, unless the county requires it, you do not need to have parishioners wear face masks and gloves and things like that. In most cases, that won't be the case. But again, check your county requirements. Let's see. Any questions about keeping things clean and social distancing in church?
Superintendent, I think the issue of mask is not really for the person wearing the mask, but protecting others around the person. I think we should just advise everybody to just, they can use cloth to, it doesn't necessarily have to be disposable, like, everybody should just wear mask. I would think
Yes,
we
well,
should.
yeah, you're right about the reason people are asked to wear masks is to prevent contagion to others, not to prevent yourself from being potentially infected. Which, by the way, is also why it's likely that you would do well as leaders in the church to demonstrate that you don't want to infect others. That's why you wear a mask. You're promoting their health, not protecting your own. Whether you should require everybody to come to church in a mask or not, it might entirely depend upon your context. Again, some counties require everybody in public to wear a mask. Mine does. I didn't make my own. Carrie made mine. I wouldn't know what to do if it made me. But she made my Klingon mask, and I love it, and I wear it in public because I'm a Star Trek fan, not a Star Wars fan. I just want to make that clear. Anyways, if you begin to turn people away, and it's not county law, if you begin to turn people away from church because of not wearing masks, gloves, or things like that, I think you run the risk of doing something unnecessary and unnecessarily unhospitable. However, if it is your county law, then if there's any way for you as a church to have a couple masks you can hand out when people come that don't have them, suggest they do that. Again, comply with what the county is requiring. What you don't want to contribute to, friends, is being that news story in your local paper about the church flaunting the laws and spreading the virus. You want to be the group of people that your community recognizes is creatively living out the good news of Jesus in healthy ways that are intended to protect the well-being of others. Let that be the headline. Okay, let's see. What's next? Oh man, there's a horrible thing I have to share. This is horrible. I can't stand this one. Visitor limitations. I don't know about you. I want visitors in my church. I want new people logging on my virtual world. I want as many people as possible. And here's what every county right now requires, and it will probably be true when we start to get back together again. You are encouraged to go out in public in safe ways, but not outside of your county. Right now, there's a restriction in most counties, in fact, every county, as I said, in the state of California, that unless you're an essential worker, that is, I'm a doctor traveling from Stanislaus County to San Mateo County, you can't travel beyond county lines. If I'm a shopper who wants to buy my meat in Stanislaus County and I live in San Mateo County, you can't do that, not legally. So what happens with churches? Chances are, best practice would say, if you have out-of-town guests visiting somebody in your church, the standard recommendation from your church should be, while we love everybody, we want everybody in church, if you have out-of-town guests, we recommend that you stay at home and worship with us virtually. And again, this is temporary. It's not going to last forever. If Sam and Jill come to church with Grandma and Grandpa from New York, I don't know that it would be advantageous for you to say you can't come in. But watch what your county requirements are. And please encourage people not to travel outside of their county or within a 10-mile radius. I'm sorry, that's a county or 10-mile radius. Okay, that's a tough, bitter pill to swallow. Temporary, again, but something to be aware of. Any questions about those issues at this point? Okay, I hate doing this, but it's so important that we do this, right? It's so important that we think through how are we going to be a good witness and yet cooperative with public health in ways that are demonstrably for the good of the community and our church. So let's do it right. What I want to talk about next are how do we mitigate some potential losses? And I'll just toss these up because I made a slide, not because we need it, I guess. But here are some potential losses to consider. Financial loss, volunteer withdrawal, and devastated people. I think we're already experiencing in